This video is sponsored by DistroKid. Hey, what's up? Today, I'm going to revisit a very simple beat that I made on the Octatrack that I feel like is pretty effective at conveying how much you can do with very few parts. And by parts, I mean like individual tracks, not parts on the Octatrack. That's a different story. This concept can apply to pretty much any sequencer or sampler. I'm just using the Octatrack here. I'm just going to show you a pattern that I've made and then go through each track of that pattern and show how they each have their own intricacies that kind of elevate them on their own so that when you combine them, you get a little something extra. We're going back to basics today, and I'm really kind of just excited to show you this beat I've been working on. So we're just going to jam around a little bit, and then I will, again, break it down track by track and explain how we got it all. I'm not sure if you've heard, but DistroKid recently launched an iOS app. And don't worry, they're working on an Android app too. But I just wanted to show you really quick how simple it is to navigate. In case you're not familiar, DistroKid is a music distribution service for independent artists, and it makes it super easy to upload and distribute your music to Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Music, and all of the other streaming services you know and love. So I've already downloaded this app, and I'm just going to open it really quick. And the landing page is just going to show all of your music. I have stuff I've released as Slow Haste and from my old band in Chicago. You can go in and edit your tracks as you would with your regular account by going in and altering the credits, looking at lyrics. This is instrumental, so it's going to tell me I can't edit lyrics, but it's a really cool feature that you can do right from your phone. Of course, there's the familiar upload interface you know and love, where you select the services you want uploaded to, select your songs, which artist you want to release the song through, if you have multiple bands associated with your account. If you're familiar with DistroKid, this is all going to be familiar to you. It's just wrapped up in a really nice compact package on iOS. You can also look at your bank. I'm not going to tap that icon because I don't want you to see the $37 I've made from streaming. But yeah, it's a really fun and simple app. And you should absolutely go to the App Store to download it if you're an iOS user. Thanks DistroKid for sponsoring this video. I have a link in the description of this video to get 7% off of your first year of subscription if you use that link. So go check it out. Okay, cool. So like I said, a pretty simple idea, right? And let's break things down based on how they're kind of introduced in the way I just sequenced this right now, which I've been messing around with trying to figure out how I want to introduce this idea. But we're going to start with this main element here, which is a sample recorded direct from the Korg Monilogue XD. It's just an arpeggio, but it's using a sawtooth wave on oscillator 1, and then one of the user oscillators that is basically like kind of a semi-randomized step sequencer. It's called Sneak, I think, S-N-E-Q. I'll link it down in the description for you to check out. Here's what it sounds like on its own without any effects. That's it. It's got some nice rich bass to it, and you can also hear these like doom, 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 sort of like square wave-ish plucks. That's from the Sneak sequence algorithm or oscillator, user oscillator. And then that higher note that kind of splits and flanges a little bit, that's just a saw wave. And I believe I have some detune on there. Maybe 2 saw waves mixed in? I can't recall exactly. But anyways, this is what it sounds like all octatracked out. So you can see our filter settings here. We've got a little bit of distortion. And just some of the bass cut out. You could hear it was pretty hefty in the main sample before we applied these effects. And then we have some dark reverb. And this is being sent to the right side of the stereo field quite a bit. We just have this LFO modulating the depth with an inverse triangle wave, kind of just pulsing along a little bit, which sounds really nice for this sample. And then we have that reverb that kind of stays floaty in the background. And it's really cool how it picks up on those more percussive, plucky notes. Then at the end of the pattern, so again, just one trig down at the beginning of this track, and then at the start of the third pattern to restart the sample. And then we have these two little turnarounds, which kind of dance across the stereo field a little bit. See, that one's on the right, that one's on the left where the main sample lies, to kind of balance it out with the reverb that's panned a little bit to the right. And you can just see we have the retrig values and the actual start position of that sample adjusted. So that's the main sample. We took a pretty basic arpeggio in terms of the notes involved. We mixed in a couple of oscillators with some cool tricks, some experimentation there, and then we just added some effects to it to kind of make it gel with the beat that we have going on in the background. So that's one way I like to take something really simple and kind of spruce it up a bit to make it more sonically interesting in the context of a beat. All right, let's talk about the kick track next, because it's just about the most simple thing you've ever seen in your life. Would you look at that, Mary? Okay, so this is the most complicated part of the kick track. It's just this sample from Blank Form's Beats 2 sample pack, I believe. The little tail, that second note of that, gets cut off by this kick. So you're only really hearing that bum, that breathy sound. And I mean, hey, that's really the kick track there. We have a little bit of filtering. I like to turn down the width on the filter a little bit, and I almost always use the same kick. And what I'll do is I'll tune it down a little bit and I'll filter it a little bit. And then usually on the dig attack, I'll add some drive, but sometimes I find that the filter distortion on the Octatrack can be a little much. So I don't have anything going on here. And I think the kick sounds really nice. It's just kind of like a flat, simple kick that does its job here. Onto the snare. This is honestly one of my favorite parts. I'm just gonna play it and show you the trigs so you can see rhythmically what's happening. And then I'll show you some of the individual samples that we're using, because all of the snares happening are all on this one track. Let's listen to it with the kick. So yeah, you can hear the main snare sample is pretty standard, right? But mixed in with these extra hits that we are parameter locking in various ways, like with our envelope, with our balance, which is the panning, and we're changing up some of the samples. We have a lot of stuff from, again, as always, the Blank Forms and Bath's Splice sample pack. So just taking a few rhythmic elements, adding in some trigs, and switching up what those trigs are allows you to use a single track in a really versatile way. Instead of dedicating a whole other track to percussion that you want to use subtly, we can mix that in with our main snare. And it also frees up a whole other track potentially for other stuff you want, even more percussion if that's the case. You don't have to make it overly complicated. And I think I left a lot of breathing room in here for growth in the future if I want to work on this pattern. All right, another simple one. Let's talk about the hi-hat pattern. Actually, this is a little less simple than I recall now that I'm looking at this pattern. Let's look at the sample. This is the sample we're working with from the Bath Splice pack. It's a hi-hat loop, but what I've done is I've basically sampled one of those hits. I've turned the hold and the release way down, as you can see, and I've turned the volume down, and that's giving us a really soft type of hit. And these are varied so that on the upbeat, you get a much louder note. I've also individually moved these notes around on the grid to fine-tune some swing. I did this manually, and to be honest, it was a bit of a pain, but it was the only way to truly kind of get the result that I wanted to after I played the pattern and manually kind of finely adjusting the location of these hits. And let's listen to it in the context with the kick drum. And add the snare in. So that's our percussion section. It's just 3 tracks. And although the pattern is, just a loop as of this point, I think it's a pretty interesting pattern, and it gives you some elements to build the pattern with and kind of listen to how they rhythmically interact. Specifically, I think the hi-hat and the snare sound really nice together. So lastly, we have our bass synth, which is just 1 trig. It's again a direct sample from the Korg Monilogue XD into the Octatrack, and it sounds like this. It's again an arpeggio. Honestly, treated it pretty similarly to the other ARP that we have on track 3. Primarily what we're doing is we're using that inverse triangle wave. And I think I misspoke on the wave for our main synth track. I believe that's the saw. So for the bass, we're using an inverse triangle wave to get that same sort of side chain pumping effect by using an LFO to the volume. So you get that pulsing sound. I do have a little bit of a transient click in there as the sample turned off, which I just haven't edited out yet, but that's very easy to do. And to be honest, I forgot that that was still in there until I listened back without the kick drum and other percussion. I think those sound great together. And again, it's just that 1 trig. So let's listen to the bass with all of the percussion. See, at least where I'm sitting next to my monitors, turned down pretty low to record this video, I can't hear that transient. It just blends in with the percussion and the sound of the kick. The rest is basically just playing with the quick mutes on the Octatrack to mute and unmute things as the pattern goes on. Tracks 4 and 7 are empty, and track 8 is being used as a master track. I do want to go into the settings that I have set up for this scene here. And this is basically a second scene. And all I've done here is I've taken some retrig values and timing for the kick drum and the snare to kind of get a glitch. To play around with those. I honestly don't really love the effect that it created, and to do transitions I ended up just kind of muting things and soloing the from the main synth part because I think that sounds cool. But I definitely want to add some scenes here with some filtering on the master track. And yeah, I'm having fun with this one. I recorded this a while ago and have been revisiting this beat, just playing around with it. And I hope you learned something listening to me talk about it. If you did, I would strongly urge you to check out my Patreon at patreon.com/slowhaste. I have different tiers with different perks, including one-on-one lessons. I teach Octatrack, Digitact, Digatone, OP1, basic modular stuff, and just general synth consultations. I help a few students with songwriting and development. I like to kind of treat it as a one-on-one process and use it as like a consultative service on top of teaching these devices if that's what folks are interested in. And if you just want to drop a line and say, hey, the best place to do that is on Instagram. I am at slowhaste. I post stupid stuff about my dog and the seagulls that live on my roof and the occasional song recommendation. So drop a line there, say, hey, I'd love to chat with you. And down in the comments, let me know what you're working on. Do you have any cool projects happening? Are you in a rut? I've honestly been in a huge rut since I released my album back in May and then moved, but I'm playing almost every day. I am playing the Super 6 that I got recently, and it's been an absolute blast, and it feels good to just learn songs and sharpen up my piano skills, even if I'm not working on my own music. So yeah, thanks for stopping by as always, and I will see you some other time. Peace.